As you've probably already figured out, electricity is extremely important for the survival of your city. Without enough electricity, your citizens will abandon their residential, commercial, industrial, and office buildings, and the city services will cease to function. The amount of electricity required varies between buildings, and the total amount of electricity needed will increase as you expand your city. This video is designed to be a general overview of how the electricity system in City Skylines works. There are many ways to generate electricity, and they can be broadly broken down into the following categories: resource-based, renewable, and nuclear. Resource-based includes oil and coal power plants, which are available early in the game. They are relatively cheap and have moderate electricity production. The main downside to these power plants is that they require deliveries of either coal or oil to continue running, and if the traffic in your city isn't great, that could be a problem. Also, these oil and coal power plants are the only ones that produce ground pollution if you care about that sort of thing. For the sake of completeness, I am also going to include the incineration plant, waste disposal unit, ultimate recycling plant, and waste processing complex in this category. While these buildings produce electricity, it is not their main purpose. They have the highest weekly upkeep cost to megawatt output, and it really isn't worth having them as your main power source. Instead, the electricity output should be viewed as a bonus in addition to their main function, which is processing or removal of waste from your city. Renewable electricity production includes wind turbines and advanced wind turbines, solar and solar updraft, geothermal, ocean thermal energy conversion, hydro, and wave. These power plants are considered to be more green than the resource-based power plants and produce only noise pollution. There is quite a range in cost and electricity production, either above or below the resource-based options, depending on what you pick. The main disadvantage of some of these power plants is that their energy production is variable. Wind is dependent on having areas of high wind. Solar is dependent on the weather, with production dropping by 30% when it isn't sunny. And hydro depends on the volume of water you can dam off and can be extremely difficult to implement. Lastly, nuclear includes both fission and fusion power plants. Both of these options are some of the highest producers of electricity. I would consider one of the only downsides to these power plants being how late in the game they're available, with the fission nuclear power plant unlocking at milestone 11, Colossal City, and the fusion nuclear power plant is a monument, which are unlocked at milestone 13, Megalopolis, and requires a number of unique buildings to unlock. The majority of these power plants are available in the base game, except for the geothermal power plant, ocean thermal energy conversion plant, and solar updraft tower, which are from the Green Cities DLC, and the wave power plant is from the high-tech building content creator pack. And although the fusion power plant is part of the base game, it is a monument, as I mentioned, and may be difficult to unlock. With all of these options for electricity production, you may be wondering, what is the best for your city? And well, that is completely up to you. At the beginning of your city, you'll be somewhat restricted on your choices, but eventually other options will unlock and you'll have to consider cost, pollution, electricity production, upkeep cost, water consumption, and even how you've decided to design your city. Other than city design, all of this information is available in the info view for each power plant. Once you're in the electricity menu at the bottom, you can hover your cursor over each of the individual power plant options to bring up their info view. The info view will give you an overview of all of the components related to that particular power plant option. Now, there really isn't a wrong answer for selecting a power plant, as long as you're able to provide enough electricity for your city to survive and grow. Once you've selected your power plant and placed it in your city, keeping in mind that the ground and noise pollution may require it to be away from your residential buildings, you'll need to figure out how to get your electricity from the power plant to the rest of your city. Buildings within close proximity to one another will transfer electricity between them, and buildings that are further apart will require the use of power lines to transfer electricity over long distances. The electricity info view is the best way to see which of these options you'll be able to use. There are two different ways to get to your electricity info view. Number one, it is automatically brought up when you open the electricity menu at the bottom to build a power plant. And number two, the electricity info view button in the top left info view menu. The electricity info view has an electricity availability meter at the top, which is a graphical representation of how much electricity you're consuming and producing. If you're producing more than you're consuming, it is in the green, and if you're consuming more than you're producing, it is in the red. Obviously, green is better, and you want to try and keep your electricity production above your electricity consumption. There is also a color map that is overlaid on your city, showing you your active power plants in dark blue. inactive power plants in black, and buildings that are connected and disconnected from the grid in light blue and brown respectively. Although not specifically indicated on the legend, your power lines are shown flashing between light blue and dark blue. You'll also notice that all of your buildings have a transparent perimeter that extends around them. This is the area in which buildings can transfer electricity between them. If the electricity perimeter of two buildings touch, they are able to transfer electricity. However, if the buildings are too far away, you'll be required to use power lines to transfer electricity. For a quick example of some of the items that we've discussed, we've gone back in time to the end of episode 1 of our city, Lakewood. At this point, we had limited options for electricity production and chose the coal power plant. And because we were worried about the ground pollution that it was going to be producing, we have it on the right-hand side of our city, across the highway from the residential area on the left. On the right, we've zoned some industrial buildings. These also produce ground pollution, so having the coal power plant within close proximity has no ill effects. Taking a look at the electricity info view, we can see that the residential buildings are all close enough that they're sharing electricity, and the industrial buildings are all close enough to the coal power plant that they are also sharing electricity. However, these two zones are far enough apart that they are not sharing electricity between themselves. So what we've had to do at the bottom near the roundabout is run a power line from the right-hand side of the city to the left-hand side to make sure that everything is connected. Something else for everyone to keep in mind is to pay attention to your electricity budget, not only in terms of consumption and production in the electricity info view, but also the budget tab of the economy panel. This is especially important at the very beginning of your city, where you're going to be producing way more electricity than you need at a time when you're trying to save money. Looking at consumption and production, you can adjust the slider of your electricity budget accordingly. This is also useful at a time when you may not be able to afford a new power plant but need more electricity. Increasing the budget above 100% will give you more electricity at a cheaper cost than building a new power plant. However, keep in mind there are diminishing returns when increasing a budget above 100%, and sooner rather than later you will need to build a new power plant. Last but not least, there are a couple things in the game that can affect the electricity consumption within your city. There are 4 policies. One from the base game, power usage, will decrease electricity consumption for a cost per building. 3 from the Snowfall DLC, extra insulation, which will decrease usage by not having to heat homes as much. No electricity for heat, which will decrease electricity usage by forcing everyone to use heating services. And only electricity for heat, which is the opposite of no electricity for heat, increasing usage and forcing everyone to use electricity rather than heating services. Other than policies, there's one unique faculty from the university campus area that is part of the campus DLC, the School of Science, and it will reduce electricity consumption in the city. This is by no means a be-all end-all guide on electricity in city skylines, but should be enough to give you a general idea of what's going on. If you have any tips or information that you'd like to share, don't hesitate to do so down in the comments for myself or anyone else who might be interested in learning about electricity in city skylines. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you were able to learn something along the way. Please let me know what you thought of the video with a like, dislike, and or comment down below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for more City Skylines content in the future, and I'll see everyone in the next episode.